Now.
Okay. Uh, Thanks everyone for coming. As I say, this is a last-minute presentation I'm giving that I gave also in DrupalCon and a few Drupal camps before this year. So if someone was attending my presentation in DrupalCon, this is pretty much the same one as there. So my name is Lauri Eskola. I come from Finland, from nearby. Here, I think everyone knows where I come from. In some countries where I've given presentations, not everyone even have heard of the country. I'm Drupal Team System co-maintainer in Drupal 8. I work for a Finnish Drupal company called Druid. They are pretty awesome because they sponsor me to do these presentations in many Drupal camps, and they've also paid me this year to fix Drupal 8 criticals. I love kittens more than anything else. I've added 68 of them to Drupal 8 core, and counting, more coming up. I think there is now 104 of them in Drupal core. I also like to break Bartik. So we're going to have later today presentation from the maintainer of the Bartik. So maybe now she's angry for me and she's going to troll me back. So the presentation is about Drupal theme system. The reason why I usually have this slide is because the name of the presentation is Drupal 8 Backend of the Frontend. And I want to explain what is the, why I choose the session title to be a little bit different than the topic. The topic is Drupal theme system in general. But people don't understand always what Drupal theme system means, because some people think it concerns theming or something else. But it's the layer behind templates and something that loads the templates that you need. Let's say if you use headless Drupal, you're not using Drupal's theme system. You're building your own theme system in your headless application. If you are using Drupal theme and you are outputting your markup using Twig templates, then you're using Drupal theme system. And what Drupal theme system has been made for is to create flexible way to output markup as safe as possible. So some of the parts in Drupal 8 has been made a little bit more complicated. At least some people think so. What we've tried in the theme system initiative is that we create simplified theme system instead, so that this is simpler than what we used to have, and we have reduced the amount of ways doing things and reduced the amount of layers we have. Also, other goal of our initiative, the work group we've had, has been to be as lazy as possible. And what it means is to make things as fast as possible to support making fast websites. And that happens by making things lazy. So what we've actually done for the theme system, one of the things is we've thought is Drupal template process layer something we want to have. So this is a good example of additional layer. So we have pre-process and process layer. They are pretty much the same, but they're different. They are meant for different things. So process layer was meant for flattening structured arrays into strings. So let's say in the process underscore, just a template process, actually. What it does, it has implodes that are making classes arrays into just classes variable and makes the array into a string so that it can be used in the template easily. And this is another good example. It's from the process HTML. So what we do is we render page top and page bottom variables in here. But what happens if someone in the template decides to not print these variables? We've rendered page top and page bottom. We've saved expensive CPU time on that. But that front-end developer decides not to use it because it's not relevant for some use cases. So because it's done before the template, we can't know all the decisions, what's going to happen after that. Actually, we can't know any of the decisions that's going to happen after that. So what we have in Drupal 8 is something called lazy rendering, so that we don't need the process layer at all. And let's say if someone prints page top, we know, OK, someone is printing page top. This is render array. We need to render this before we can print, because printing render array doesn't make any sense. So because we are using Twig, we can make this kind of extensions to allow doing different kind of things. PHP template is not very good at this because it's just plain PHP. So with PHP, this would be not possible. The same applies for heads, CSS style scripts. If someone decides not to use them, they still has to be generated. Also, other problem with converting the nicely structured arrays into strings is that if you want to change whatever is inside the array after that, it's pretty much impossible because it's just a string. It's not structured at all. You have to build some nasty regex or something to change it. So in Drupal 8, because we are using lazy rendering, you can modify the render array or whatever you have still in the template. Let's say the classes is good, one good example that you might still want to alter inside the template. And now that we are not converting the array into a string in the process layer, you can still modify the structured array easily in the template. So what we did for the process layer, we just removed it. If you want to hear more about the reasons, there's even more reasons than what I explained in this change record. So you can find everything, all the discussions, what happened when we wanted to remove that. So the process layer is gone. It's not there anymore. Another thing which is relevant for this one is we used to have theme function, just theme function. There's theme functions and theme function. Theme function is the function that renders your hook theme implementation render array thing into a string immediately as in return from the function. So let's say if you want to print item list, I don't have a laser now, but if you want to print item list over there using theme function, in the template, when you're looking at things, you only have a string, so it cannot be modified after that point anymore. Then the render arrays existed already in Drupal 7, as you can see in the example, but the problem with those was that you had to remember to call the render function in the PHP template. In Drupal 8, we don't have anymore the theme function, because that is completely irrelevant use case. We only support render arrays, because converting arrays into strings immediately is a bad idea, as I explained earlier. So we want to have it as lazy as possible. So everything is render array, because render arrays are lazy. And to make it easier for people to use, it's being rendered automatically, so you don't have to remember to call render function yourself. So you just put render array into Twig template and print it there, and it will render automatically. You can even generate the render array inside the template if you want to, if you think that is necessary. I don't suggest to do that, but it's technically possible. Also, we used to have the theme functions. The theme functions are markup that lives in PHP functions. And this is one very nice example of theme function in Drupal 7. It's item list. How many of you like modifying item lists? Oh, there's people who like modifying item lists. Awesome. But I'm going to show it might get better in Drupal 8. So this is the item list in Drupal 7. As you can see, it cannot fit this projector screen, which is like 60-inch or something. So how do you think it's gonna fit your 15-inch MacBook Pro laptop? It's not gonna fit. But instead, this thing will fit your 15-inch MacBook Pro easily, and it's very easy to modify. This is how you modify item lists in Drupal 8, because all the theme functions have been converted to templates. This is actually something pretty new, because this was finished 3 weeks ago, still during the release candidate phase. So we really wanted to get rid of the theme functions, and now we don't have any of them in Drupal 8. Actually, we do have a few of them for testing purposes, because we still have the theme functions supported there. So if there is some modules or something still using theme functions, they can still use them. But in Drupal core, we don't have any theme functions that are in real use cases. Also, theme functions will be deprecated in 8.0.x. So don't use theme functions. Also, we are planning on creating some nasty plans of giving you deprecation notices. So we really want to make you get rid of theme functions. Where?
In my logs?
No, in your website. You're going to see DSM. Yeah. So if you have theme functions, be prepared for that.
Oh, if you have develop.
No, it's not devel, but probably if you have tweak debug or something. We haven't still decided what is going to be the configuration actually triggering that. But probably like tweak debug is something we can just know for sure that's not on the production. So if the tweak debug is on, we can give you a warning about theme functions.
The theme version function of marking all of the Drupal 6 releases unsupported in February.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any performance penalty to only using templates and no theme functions?
Yes, there is a performance penalty on that, but we actually had a very long conversation about that, I guess, in DrupalCon, because the last remaining theme functions were really complicated one, just because of that reason, that converting them is going to create a huge performance regression. But there was two reasons, two things that made us convinced that this is the way to go. One was that modifying template is so much easier that actually three reasons. One, modifying template is so much easier that it makes sense. One, two, theme functions are insecure. I'm going to explain later why. Three, we have caching, render caching now in Drupal 8, so that almost everything is render cacheable. Even views is render cacheable by automatically. So the performance hit now is smaller than it used to be 1 year ago. So with these three reasons given, we were convinced that this is a good way to go. And if you read I don't have the link here for the change record, but if you go to the issue, the meta issue of that, you can find the child issues, and there we have the discussion of should we do this or not. And there is all the performance profiling and everything available. So it wasn't. It was a decision that we explicitly wanted to make. It wasn't something that we did for unknown. So let's proceed for the theme system pipeline. So this is pretty much similar for Drupal 7 things that you build. So this is not specific for Drupal 8, but there are some small modifications we've made for this in Drupal 8. But the reason why I want to include this still, even though this is in Drupal 7 pretty much the same, is because there's lots of misunderstandings in these things and lots of questions people have. So it might be still relevant. All the code examples I use in this theme system phase where we talk about the pipeline can be found from this GitHub module. So if you want to download it, you can just take a look what we've done there. So let's start from the beginning. So everything starts with hook theme implementation. So what is the hook theme implementation? You create it in hook theme. It is the array item over here. And what you define there is like the default values for the variables, like in this example. There might be also other configurations related for that hook theme implementation. Like you can specify different template name or base hook or render element or some configuration that you don't want to do every time you create a render array. The variables are defined in the variables item, and you specify here also the type of the variable you want to put there. After you created your hook theme implementation, you have to create a controller or builder to build a render array. And here you can see the same variables that I had in the hook theme implementation. They have the hash in the item, which means that this is a variable inside this hook theme implementation. If it doesn't have the hash, Drupal tries to render that as a render children. So if it's a variable, you have to have the hash. And that is a pretty common question people ask, like, why do we have to hash? That is the reason. And the reason for that, we have the hash instead of something else is because arrays are not pretty good at having different kind of data inside of them. So if we move in the future for more objectified rendering system, then we could get rid of this thing, and it would be pretty sweet actually. But yeah, maybe in the future we are going to get rid of that. Anyway, you can see here the variables, but this is not the only way to build the render arrays. One other way that we are probably moving towards even more is to use render elements. To specify the idea is to specify your render element, the render arrays defaults instead of using the hooked implementation in the render element, because you can actually add pretty much of logic inside the whole render element thing, and that is actually pretty sweet. And that's something we figure out that we want to move this forward a lot this year. I think there has been initiative moving towards to that, even for a longer time, more in the render system initiative, I think. But now, even in the team system, we think that this is the way to go, and we have done some initial work to move towards that. So, what is the difference? Is that you build a render array. Instead of calling team, hash team, you call hash type, and it will call a render element. And so here we have the type sandwich. This is the same as the sandwich over here. Then here we specify what we are gonna what is the defaults for this render element, and then it's gonna add the defaults for the render array, and then it's gonna use the hook team here to actually print it out. So I would suggest to create hook instead of hook team implementations. I would suggest to create render elements. They are pretty sweet. So there's two different ways of doing this. Maybe in the future we can have only one. Hopefully it's the render elements. After you have printed your render array, what's going to happen is we have theme suggestions happening. So what the theme suggestions are, they are when you use the node template and you want to override that for the article node time. You can override it using node -- article template. So that is called theme suggestion. You can create theme suggestions yourself also, and that happens in Drupal 8 in hook theme suggestions and hook theme suggestion alter. In Drupal 7, that used to happen in the preprocess function, which was not very nice because it is not actually preprocessing. And there's other cool stuff also, because you can have preprocess functions now for the specific preprocess function, so that you could have your own preprocess function for the article node time, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, so here, what is the difference between two levels? Is the hook theme suggestions is level where you just create theme suggestions. Usually, you have that in the module specifying the hook theme implementation. And then if you need to alter that in somewhere else, you use the hook theme suggestions alter. And then you can remove already existing suggestions or add your own ones as an extension there. You can use the hook theme suggestions in other modules and themes also, but then you can rely on what's there before. You can just add new ones in the chain. And here in this example, I have two sandwiches, and I create theme suggestion with the name of the sandwich, so that we have two theme suggestions: sandwich that's the Chicados and sandwich that's just yummy. And this is pretty cool. I'm going to explain that specific preprocess function soon, a little bit more deeply. So after we have all the theme suggestions collected, we have the preprocess layer, where we have first the template preprocess hook, which is the first preprocess function that is being run specifically for this theme hook implementation. This template preprocess sandwich should be only in the module specifying your hook theme implementation, so don't create these in the theme or other modules. So let's say if you're extending sandwich module with better sandwiches module, don't create template preprocessed sandwich in your better sandwiches module. It's supposed to be only in the sandwich module, which is creating the hook team implementation. After that is the layer where you can hook into, which is the hook preprocess sandwich. So this is the place that you can use in the other modules and also in the team. And here you can trust that every time you go to the hook preprocess function, that the template preprocess has been run. So the idea of the template preprocess function is that you can create a altering that the preprocess functions can rely on. But then, when you alter something in the preprocess function, none of the other preprocess functions can rely what's going to happen there, because you don't know exactly what is the order going to be, except in the themes you can rely that the parent theme's preprocess functioning has been happened, but the other modules can rely on other modules preprocessing. And then after that, you can see a specific preprocess function. So as I showed you, I created a theme suggestion for the sandwiches. So when I print Chicago, there is also a preprocess function specifically for Chicago sandwich being triggered. So if I want to alter something specifically for this one use case, you can use the specific preprocess function. And this is run after all the previous preprocess functions has been run. So you can trust here that all of this level of preprocessing has happened already. And then after that happens this one. And after these layers, we are in the template, and then we just simply print all the variables. Simple as that. That was pretty much the whole theme system pipeline. Every step you can alter things. So if you want to download the code, it's available in the GitHub. So let's proceed for the tweak. What you really need to know, this is more the backend perspective. I guess there's going to be another tweak presentation today, which is really cool. I'm going to go really quickly with this one because of that. But one of the coolest things we have in the tweak is tweak magic. And what is tweak magic is, it is the logic to decide what is being printed right now. So let's say if you think I'm printing sandwich to cheese, and you're thinking what's sandwich and what is cheese inside the sandwich. There is multiple answers for that because it depends on the use case. It could be a sandwich could be an array, and cheese could be item in that sandwich. But if that is not correct, if sandwich is not an array, then we try, OK, maybe this is an object, and cheese is a property inside that object. And if that is correct, we are going to print that and be happy. But that might not be correct. Then we proceed, and then we try for dynamic properties using the PHP magic functions. If that fails, then we proceed for methods. First, we try simply just cheese method, which might not exist. Then we try get and is method convention. So let's say in Drupal, you have the node object in your template, and you want to print the title. There is a get title method inside the node object. To print the title, you don't have to say node dot get title. Instead, you just say sandwich node dot title, and it will automatically find the get title method from there using this thing. Someone might think this is really slow. Yeah, this is really slow. There is a big PHP extension which converts this from PHP into raw C, which makes it like 100 times faster. So if you have site, especially if it's uncacheable, I would suggest to use the tweak PHP extension because it makes your things a lot faster. Other things we have in Twig is we have filters and functions. Filters are kind of like Twig's convention, Twig's own concept. This is not something that exists in PHP at all. But filters are basically functions, but they are just semantically something that is meant to manipulate a content of a variable. So let's say the length filter just simply takes the text and manipulates that into length of that variable. Oops. Interesting typo. There's also functions in Twig. Good example is attach library, which doesn't return anything. It just does something in the backend, and that's it. So it attaches a library for that template. Is libraries familiar for people? Hopefully. And let's proceed for printing render arrays in Twig. So in Twig, if you want to print a render array, but you don't want to print some of the children elements of the render array, you can just use without filter for that. So these two are essentially the same, but a little bit different. Because in Drupal 7, when you hide the content comments and content links, if the content is being printed somewhere else again, the comments and the links are still hidden in there. But in Drupal 8, when we use the without filter, it simply just affects the one print use case. So if someone prints the content again later on the same template, the comments and links will be visible, and you have to configure again which render elements you don't want to see in there. And the usage of hide function can end up in the really weird situations, because last spring I was debugging a weird bug in Drupal core, and after all I figured out it was just 3 lines on top of my code, and there was hide function. And it took me a while to figure out what's happening there. So it's not very good use of render arrays. But sometimes what Twig has built inside might not be enough for your use case. So I'm going to show quickly how to create a Twig extension. So if you want to create your own filters, you just create a Twig extension class extending /Twig extension. You create getFilters method. There you return array of Twig simple filter objects. And the Twig simple filter takes as parameter. The first parameter is the name of the filter. So that is the one you call inside the Twig template. The second one is where you are mapping this filter in PHP. Should be simple enough. So this is an array because we are calling a method inside a object. You can also call just a procedural function with that. And what this does, it has, as first parameter, it has the string, which is the thing that comes for the filter before the pipe. And then we have the length that you can configure yourself as an additional parameter if you want to. Other thing you need to do before your Twig extension works is you have to tell Twig about your class. This might look very difficult, but the 2 first lines, you can basically put anything. So this is just services. This has to be services. This is always the same. But this one, you can just put anything you want to. This is the ID of your service. Then we specify the class where your Twig extension is. And then we just simply tag that extension with twig.extension. And Twig, by tagging it with that tag, Twig will come pick it up for itself. And the third step is profit. It works. If you want to download this example, it's also available in the GitHub. So you can use it however you wish. Then let's proceed for the last topic of today, which is a pretty important one. So auto-escaping. We are going deeper and deeper and deeper all the time, as you can see. So auto-escaping was I don't know how many of you were at Dries Note or have listened for the Dries Note? Raise your hand if you were at the Dries Note. Barcelona, yeah, Barcelona. Roughly more than half. So if you heard that Dries mentioned that there is some bug in Twig that is prohibiting us from releasing Drupal 8 release candidate 1, this was the feature that he was talking about. It was not Twig itself. It was our implementation of auto-escaping. We used Twig's auto-escaping, but our implementation of auto-escaping was broken that time. It was really broken. So what we did was, I guess, in July, we just decided to rewrite pretty much everything. it happened step by step. So we didn't just, OK, let's rewrite everything. But we started, OK, let's rewrite this bit. And then in September, we figured out, OK, we just have to rewrite everything. We are not going to have anything in the release that we had 1 year ago related to the auto-escape. So we had our own auto-escaping mechanism. The cool thing about auto-escaping is that there is no other CMS who has turned on the auto-escaping so far. There is frameworks that are using auto-escaping, but not any other CMS has there to turn the auto-escaping on. So it was a really, really complicated thing to do. And the people who worked on the auto-escaping were really clever people. But it was just massive project to work on. Because basically, when you auto-escape something, you have to know context of every string that you have in PHP. And that makes things complicated. But the rule number one to avoid the problems that we cover in this topic is to have your stuff in Twig template instead of in PHP. Also, this is the reason why we don't have the theme functions anymore, because we want to have everything in the Twig template instead of having them in PHP. So someone might think right now, what is escaping? So let's start with the basics. Escaping is a little bit similar as the check plane in Drupal 7. But what we do instead of removing some bits of the string, we mark them with UTF characters so that the HTML won't render them as HTML, because it's not HTML anymore, because we have this kind of characters here. So if I want to escape something manually, I could call escape method inside HTML class. And it creates this kind of markup inside your HTML code, and it ends up having something like this in your browser. So the reason why we do this is because we think if you put something inside a string, let's say your title field in the UI, this is what you want to see in the browser. If someone's name is some escaped EM text close EM, if someone's name is that in the user profile, we think that this person's name is some escaped EM text, and we want to show that in the UI instead of removing some bits of it, because it can be odd because it's not your name anymore, because we removed half of the name suddenly. So this is escaping. This is not auto-escaping. PHP is not good at managing auto-escaping, but Twig instead is pretty good at that. So what auto-escaping is, we do for every string we print inside Twig, escaping automatically, so that you don't have to care about escaping yourself. So every time you put a string inside your template, there is a auto-escaping being run for your string, which is pretty sweet. So in the preprocess function, I'm adding this text, and I'm printing it in Twig template, and you can see exactly the same behavior is happening, but automatically. So you can see in the browser the escaped kittens. Then how to avoid auto-escaping, because that is the default behavior. So I don't have to explain how that works or what's happening there, because it just happens for everything. So you don't have to care about that. What you actually have to care about is, OK, I might want to output some markup. How do I get rid of the problem I have? And if you want to avoid auto-escaping, the first thing, the easiest way to do it is to use the hash markup in render array, or convert it in another type of render array, create a template, do something else. Using hash markup is safer in Drupal 8 than it was in Drupal 7 also, because we run XSS filtering for the hash markup. But the problem with that is running XSS filtering is really damn expensive. So don't put, if you have large amount of HTML, don't put it in the hash markup, because it's going to be really slow. But if you have very small bits of markup, like I have one element here, I'm just printing kittens as italic, then you can do it with the hash markup. That's a valid use case for hash markup, because you don't want to create template for just one word. There's other ways to avoid auto-escaping if you don't want to use the hash markup. Better way for that is to use formatable markup. That's pretty strange name. In Drupal 7, we had format string. This is what it's called in Drupal 8. And the reason why it became formatable markup is because, yeah, it's not string, it's markup actually. And it's not a format markup, because when you call this, it doesn't format anything. This is lazy. It formats it when it's being printed. So what you are actually generating when you create this, you are generating an object that is formatable. It's not formatted. Or you don't call format this, because this doesn't call anything itself. So what I do here is I put all these strings coming outside from to a placeholder, at placeholder, which auto escapes everything, and everything else inside the formatable markup, we think is safe because it has to be added by the developer. It cannot be user input. So we can trust that that is safe. So we just escape all the parameters, all the placeholders you have here, and then we mark the end results as safe. And then you will have your kittens being printed as italic in the HTML. But there's also caveats in having this kind of system. When auto-escape strings are actually safe, because they are not safe always. They should be safe whenever the escape string is being printed in HTML node. That doesn't maybe ring a bell for everyone, but this maybe explains how difficult everything is related for this. But attributes, HTML attributes are not HTML. So all the use cases I have here are really dangerous. All of them has possible security hole. So here, I print a variable inside of HTML element. It is not safe because it is not being sanitized for that use case. There's other use cases like printing it inside attributes, like this. Good example is you print something in the href URL href attribute. I have here a dangerous protocol. This will print nicely to your browser. If you click this, you will get access alert there. The reason why we use the string from char code, because by doing that, we can avoid having any of the characters that our auto-escaping would escape away. So anything we have here doesn't get escaped. So these are all dangerous. There's ways to avoid some of this. So don't print your variables inside HTML elements. There's one exception for this. We have attributes objects in Drupal 8. Those ones you can trust that they are only attributes objects, and you can print them inside the HTML elements. But don't print any user input or possible user, anything containing possible user input. And the URLs, we added new placeholder for that. So you can use colon. And whenever someone puts this inside of the href now, it will escape the JavaScript away from this.
So is it the colon that notifies that this is a URL, or is it the whole colon URL?
No, it's just a colon.
Okay.
So it's placeholder, so you can use anything.
Yeah, and the colon means this is going to be a URL.
Yes, yes. Then there's also other problems, like we used to have two types of problems or one problem, but two types of data inside the preprocess function. So we had arrays and we had strings, and they work pretty well together. But now that we have the auto-escaping, we have third different data. We have objects also. So you have to take care every time you do something that you cover use cases of this variable being object a string or a array. So let's say the T function, which is also called translatable markup. So these two are the same. T function is the wrapper for creating a translatable markup. And what happens here is I'm adding it as an array key for my array. This will fatal, because you can't have objects as your array key. So object has toString magic function, but it doesn't work automatically. You have to cast it in the string. This is just basic PHP behavior. This is not something specific for Drupal, as you might expect. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because there is some really odd bugs that has been caused by this. Because it only happens in specific scenarios when something is object instead of an array. There's also other things. Actually, you can't have array here either, but you can have a string. There's other problem also that if you access an array item inside an object, it will also fatal. So you have to, before accessing array items in preprocess function, you have to check if this is actually an array. Other problems we have with this is auto-escaping is only enabled for twig templates. So if you use twig templates, you are safe. If not, you're not safe. And that's why PHP template was overtaken by the amazing Nyancat templating engine. So what we say with the friends who removed it, we replace a joke with another joke. I don't think we have much time for questions. We can take a few questions. I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Twitter.
Twitter.
Yes.
There's questions on Twitter?
No. But you'll see.
OK.
We don't have to wait while
OK.
Translation, you mentioned that the escaping gonna affect the languages. If you have languages where the characters are multiple, like in Denmark we have the words where multiple of the items are separated in two words when you look at HTML, but when you look at SEO, it's only one word. How would you handle that?
Can you ask that again, please? I didn't get that.
A doctor in English
Yeah.
is a simple word. In Denmark, it's læge with two characters. That's not that good with auto-escaping because it's HTML characters when it's escape.
So on the browser, it should still show it correctly.
But when you have the SEO people, they will look at scraping the content, and they will look at it as faulty HTML.
I don't think there is any way for managing that.
Okay.
But we should be only converting possible HTML characters so that we are only like the larger than, smaller than, and characters like that. I don't think we are converting any other UTF characters into UTF-N.
Super, thanks.
Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
Does Twig avoid double escaping if you already escaped your text for some reason, so it's already HTML entities?
So if you use any of the provided escaping methods and you mark it as markup, it doesn't escape it again.
No, but if by accident if you're not capable of writing the Norwegian letters, that you don't have it on a keyboard, so you write them as an HTML entity instead.
Yeah.
Will Twig then escape it, so it will display as an HTML entity on the web
Yes.
page? Okay.
Yeah. There is not really a way for that. For that.
No, fine.
So the theme system in Drupal 8 is significantly different from Drupal 7, I understand.
Thank God.
And yeah, is there anything that people who know Drupal 7 should pay like a particular attention to when they learn Drupal 8 theme system? That's the first question. And the second question is there anything that you don't like about the Drupal 8 system?
The second one is a really good question. That's an interesting one. The first one is there's lots of things, especially related for the escaping part, because there's lots of XSS problems with the Drupal 7 modules. And we've learned lots a lot about the XSS in Drupal 8 and the different forms of having problems with XSS. I'm not sure if any of the things we've done for Drupal 8 is possible to implement in Drupal 7 because of the architecture is so different. And to make it possible in Drupal 8, it was necessary to make huge changes for the way we think about things. So that instead of having strings, we have everything as an object. So we know in the place where we are printing, we know what's inside there. And we can have the related metadata related for that. Let's say the links, they are also objects. And there is like cacheable metadata and all other necessary data that you need when you're printing them that you can have in Drupal 7. So there's lots of things that could be done for Drupal 7, but I don't know if it's possible because of the architecture is so different. The second one was, is there something I don't like in Drupal 8 theme system?
Something that you wish had been done in a different way.
I'm really sad that we didn't get more rid of the pre-processing layer and replace it with something else, because I don't like the way pre-process functions work, because it's all magic. It works by the suggestions, so you can't really rely on something, and you can't really, like PHP Storm or other IDEs, like machines can know what is the pattern this works. So it's not really reliable because you just have to know it yourself. So that is something I wish we could have fixed for Drupal 8. Other really important thing I wish we could have fixed was we still have the render arrays, and I wish we could have something like renderable objects or something like that, because of having different kind of metadata in the render arrays is really difficult, like the variable problem I explained there. And the reason why it's really annoying is because with Twig, when you use the dot syntax, and you want to print something with the hash in the variable name, you have to use different syntax. You can use the dot syntax with the hash. So it creates different forms of problems, and also that people don't understand simply. I'm not blaming on people that they don't understand. I'm instead blaming that we have system we've built that people can't understand because it's way too complicated for people to understand. And for that reason, I think we should have renderable objects. So those are the two things I really wish we could have had for Drupal 8.
You think that could change in Drupal 8, or I think we have to wait for Drupal 9?
I wish we can change that in Drupal 8, and I'm working on that. So I really, really hope that we can make it happen. We can't convert everything into that because we have to still maintain the BC, but we could support two ways of doing it and deprecate the old way. And then contrib modules and other places could start using the renderable objects. And whenever we create new use cases, we could use those.
That switch to renderable objects, how would that affect forms?
Probably they would be object-based also, because they are right now render elements.
Changes would have to go hand in hand, right?
Yes, but we actually already built. Joel Pitet wrote a nice patch using array access, and it only has like 24 failures in head, and it uses renderable objects. It uses array access to convert them into renderable objects. So I don't think it's ready. I think there is bugs that we can't really test using the testing infrastructure. Most of the tests should be testable, especially related to the forms. But I think it illustrates that it should be possible, because 24 test failures is way less than we had, let's say, for the smart cache, which had like 3,000 test failures and test bots crashing for that. Yeah.
The render crash.
Yeah. I think we are done.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.